The origins, divine hubris and monstrous birth. King Minos of Crete. The story begins with Minos, one of the three sons of Zeus and Europa. After the death of Astrion, the king of Crete who had adopted Minos and his brothers, Rhadamanthus and Sarpedon, a dispute arose over who should rule. A sign from Poseidon. To assert his claim and prove divine favor, Minos prayed to Poseidon, the god of the sea, asking for a magnificent bull to emerge from the sea, which Minos promised to sacrifice in the god's honor. Poseidon obliged, sending forth a stunningly beautiful, pure white bull from the waves. This solidified Minos's claim to the throne, as his brothers yielded to this clear sign of divine support. Minos's fatal mistake. Minos, however, was captivated by the bull's beauty. Instead of sacrificing it as promised, he decided to keep it for his own herds and sacrificed a different, lesser bull in its place. This act of hubris, arrogance and defiance against a god, deeply angered Poseidon. Poseidon's revenge. To punish Minos, Poseidon enacted a cruel and unusual revenge. He didn't strike Minos directly but targeted his wife, Queen Pasiphaë. Poseidon cursed Pasiphaë with zoophilia, causing her to develop an overwhelming and unnatural lust for the white bull. Daedalus's ingenuity. Consumed by her divinely inflicted desire, Pasiphaë sought help from Daedalus, a master craftsman, inventor, and architect who had sought refuge in Minos's court after fleeing Athens, having murdered his talented nephew Perdiccas, to loss out of jealousy. Daedalus, renowned for his skill, constructed a hollow wooden cow, covered it with real cowhide, and placed it on wheels. He positioned it in the meadow where the white bull grazed. Pasiphaë hid inside the wooden effigy, allowing her to mate with the bull. The birth of the Minotaur. From this unnatural union, Pasiphaë conceived and gave birth to a monstrous offspring. The creature had the body of a man but the head and tail of a bull. He was named Astrius, after Minos's adoptive father, but became known universally as the Minotaur, literally meaning, bull of Minos. As the Minotaur grew, it became ferocious and developed an appetite for human flesh, as it could not be nourished by ordinary food. The Labyrinth, an ingenious prison. Minos's shame and fear. Horrified and shamed by this monstrous stepson, a living symbol of his wife's infidelity, albeit divinely caused, and his own broken promise to Poseidon, Minos needed a way to contain the creature. He couldn't bring himself to kill it outright, perhaps out of fear of further divine retribution or some lingering connection. Daedalus's commission. Minos once again turned to Daedalus. He commissioned the brilliant inventor to design and build an inescapable prison for the Minotaur. Construction of the Labyrinth. Daedalus constructed the labyrinth beneath Minos's palace at Knossos. It was an incredibly complex maze, a vast network of winding passages, dead ends, and confusing turns, designed so that once someone entered, they could never find their way out. Deep within its center, the Minotaur was imprisoned. The Athenian tribute. Blood debt. The death of Androgeus. The reason for the Minotaur's human diet is tied to another tragedy involving Minos's family. Minos's human son, Androgeus, traveled to Athens to participate in the Panathenaic Games. Being exceptionally skilled, he won every contest he entered. There are differing accounts of his death. Jealousy. King Aegeus of Athens grew jealous or fearful of Androgeus's prowess and had him ambushed and murdered on his way to Thebes. The Marathonian bull. Aegeus sent Androgeus to kill the Marathonian bull, which was, in some versions, the very same Cretan bull that fathered the Minotaur, later captured by Heracles and brought to mainland Greece. The bull killed Androgeus. Killed by competitors. Envious Athenian competitors killed him during the games. Minos's retaliation. Enraged by his son's death, Minos waged war against Athens and its ally Megara. Crete, being a dominant naval power, besieged Athens. Furthermore, the gods afflicted Athens with a terrible plague and famine. The oracle's decree. Desperate, the Athenians consulted the oracle at Delphi, who told them they must appease Minos to end their suffering. The price of peace. Minos dictated harsh terms. Every 9 years, some sources say every year, Athens was required to send a tribute of 7 young men and 7 young women, 14 youths in total, to Crete. These youths were chosen by lot and sent unarmed into the labyrinth to be hunted and devoured by the Minotaur. This grim tribute was the price for the death of Androgeus and the cost of peace. Theseus the hero, volunteering for death. The third tribute. Several cycles of this horrifying tribute passed. As the time for the third tribute approached, the people of Athens were despairing. Theseus steps forward. Theseus, the heroic son of King Aegeus, though some myths claim his father was Poseidon, making him a demigod, had recently arrived in Athens and established himself as a hero by clearing the road from Troezen of bandits and monsters. Witnessing the grief of the families whose children were chosen, and perhaps feeling responsible as the king's son, Theseus volunteered to be one of the 7 young men sent to Crete. His goal was not to be a victim but to kill the Minotaur and end the tribute. Aegeus's plea. King Aegeus was devastated but couldn't dissuade his son. He made Theseus promise that if he succeeded, he would change the black sail of the ship used for the mournful journey to a white sail upon his return, signaling his victory from afar. If he failed, the ship would return with the black sail, confirming his death. Ariadne's love and the thread. Arrival in Crete. When Theseus and the other Athenian tributes arrived in Crete, they were paraded before King Minos. Ariadne's intervention. Minos's daughter, Princess Ariadne, and in some versions, her sister Phaedra, saw Theseus and immediately fell in love with the handsome Athenian hero. She couldn't bear the thought of him being killed by her monstrous half-brother. Seeking help, determined to save him, Ariadne secretly approached Theseus, offering her help in exchange for his promise to take her away from Crete and marry her. Theseus readily agreed. Daedalus's advice. Again, Ariadne sought advice from Daedalus, the labyrinth's creator, who perhaps felt some guilt or sympathy. He suggested 2 crucial aids. A sword, to fight the Minotaur, though some versions have Theseus fighting bare-handed. A ball of thread, clue, this was the key to navigating the labyrinth. Daedalus advised Theseus to tie one end of the thread to the entrance of the labyrinth and unwind the ball as he ventured deeper. After defeating the Minotaur, he could follow the thread back to the entrance. Confrontation and escape. Entering the labyrinth. Following Ariadne's instructions, and Daedalus's ingenuity, Theseus tied the thread to the labyrinth's entrance and ventured into the darkness, unwinding the ball as he went. The other Athenian youths likely waited near the entrance or followed cautiously. Slaying the beast. Theseus navigated the complex maze until he reached the center, where he confronted the Minotaur. The ensuing fight is depicted variously. Sometimes a brutal wrestling match where Theseus uses his strength, sometimes a sword fight using the weapon Ariadne provided. Ultimately, Theseus killed the Minotaur. Return and rescue. Following the thread, Theseus successfully found his way back to the labyrinth's entrance. He then led the other terrified Athenian tributes out of the maze to safety. Fleeing Crete. Under the cover of night, Theseus, Ariadne, and the rescued Athenians fled Crete. To prevent Minos's ships from pursuing them, Theseus, or Ariadne, disabled the Cretan fleet by damaging the hulls of their ships. The aftermath. Betrayal and tragedy. Abandonment on Naxos. Their escape led them to the island of Naxos, sometimes called Dia. Here, the story takes a darker turn. Theseus abandoned Ariadne while she slept. The reasons given vary widely in different versions of the myth. Theseus's faithlessness. He simply grew tired of her or never intended to marry her. Divine intervention. Dionysus. The god Dionysus appeared to Theseus in a dream and demanded he leave Ariadne, as the god desired her for himself. When Ariadne awoke, she found herself alone but was soon comforted and married by Dionysus, becoming his divine consort. Divine intervention. Athena, Hermes, other gods instructed Theseus to leave her. Shame. Theseus felt ashamed to bring home the daughter of his enemy, who had betrayed her own father. The black sail. Distraught, either over abandoning Ariadne or simply elated by his success and forgetting in his excitement, Theseus neglected his promise to his father. As his ship approached Athens, it still flew the black sail of morning. Aegeus's suicide. King Aegeus, waiting anxiously on the cliffs of Cape Sunion, saw the black sail in the distance. Believing his son was dead, he was overcome with grief and threw himself into the sea below. The sea was thereafter named the Aegean Sea in his memory. Theseus becomes king. Upon arriving in Athens and learning of his father's tragic death, Theseus became the king of Athens. He went on to have many other adventures but was forever marked by the death of his father, caused by his own forgetfulness. The fate of Daedalus. Minos's fury. When Minos discovered the Minotaur was dead and that Theseus had escaped with Ariadne, he knew Daedalus must have been involved, having built the labyrinth and likely provided the means of escape. Imprisonment. Minos imprisoned Daedalus and his young son, Icarus, possibly within the labyrinth itself or in a high tower, to prevent his knowledge and skills from benefiting others. The wings. Determined to escape Crete, Daedalus used his inventive genius once more. He gathered feathers of various sizes and bound them together with thread and wax, creating 2 pairs of wings modeled after those of birds. The flight and fall of Icarus. Daedalus warned Icarus not to fly too low, lest the sea spray dampen the wings, nor too high, lest the sun's heat melt the wax. They successfully flew from their prison, but Icarus, exhilarated by the sensation of flight, ignored his father's warning. He soared higher and higher towards the sun. The intense heat melted the wax holding the feathers together, and his wings disintegrated. Icarus plummeted into the sea and drowned. The sea where he fell became known as the Icarian Sea. Daedalus reaches Sicily. Heartbroken, Daedalus continued his flight alone, eventually reaching safety in Sicily, where he was welcomed by King Cocalus. Minos later pursued Daedalus there, leading to Minos's own death. Interpretations and symbolism. The myth of the Minotaur and the Labyrinth is rich with symbolic meaning and potential interpretations. Civilization versus barbarism. Theseus, the Athenian hero, represents order, reason, and Hellenic civilization triumphing over the monstrous, bestial nature symbolized by the Minotaur, and perhaps the perceived barbarism or dominance of Minoan. Crete, humanity's inner beast. The Minotaur, born of unnatural desire and hidden away, can symbolize the monstrous or bestial urges that reside within humans, often suppressed or locked away in the labyrinth of the subconscious. Theseus's confrontation represents the struggle to overcome these inner demons. The labyrinth as the psyche. The complex, winding labyrinth can be seen as a metaphor for the human mind, the subconscious, or the confusing journey of life itself, with its challenges and dead ends. Finding the center, killing the Minotaur, and escaping represents self-discovery or navigating life's trials. Historical echoes. Some scholars speculate that the myth reflects historical realities. Minoan power. The tribute of youths could represent actual political subjugation of Athens by the powerful Minoan civilization. Bull worship, ritual. The Minoans practiced bull leaping, depicted in frescoes at Knossos, and the bull held significant religious importance. The Minotaur myth might be a distorted Greek interpretation of these practices. Knossos Palace. The vast, complex, multi-storied palace of Knossos itself, with its confusing layout, may have inspired the idea of the labyrinth. The word, labyrinth, might be related to the word, labris, a symbol of a double-headed axe prominent in Minoan iconography found at Knossos. Divine justice. The story serves as a cautionary tale about the consequences of defying the gods, Minos's broken promise, and the destructive nature of divine wrath, Poseidon's curse on Pasiphaë. Cultural legacy. The Minotaur and the Labyrinth have remained potent symbols in Western culture for millennia. Ancient art. Depicted on Greek pottery, coins, and reliefs. Literature. Referenced and reinterpreted by countless authors from Ovid, Metamorphoses, and Virgil, Aeneid, in antiquity to Dante, Inferno, where the Minotaur guards the circle of violence, Chaucer, Shakespeare, Borges, The House of Astraeus, Nikos Kazantzakis, Mary Renaud, The King Must Die, and numerous modern fantasy writers. Visual arts. A popular subject for painters and sculptors from the Renaissance, e.g., depictions of Theseus and Ariadne, to modern artists like Picasso, who frequently used the Minotaur as a complex symbol in his work. Opera and music, featured in operas and musical compositions. Psychology. The labyrinth is used as a metaphor in psychology and psychoanalysis. Games. The Minotaur and labyrinths are staple elements in numerous video games and tabletop role-playing games. In essence, the myth of the Minotaur is a foundational story exploring themes of power, betrayal, monstrosity, heroism, ingenuity, love, and the perilous relationship between mortals and the divine. Its intricate narrative and powerful symbols continue to resonate, ensuring its place as one of the most recognized and reinterpreted legends from Greek mythology.